How can someone tell if their therapist is right for them?
Even the best therapist may not be the best match for somebody. So research has shown that within the second or third session, you can usually tell if the therapist is going to be the right match for you. It's hard to quantify, but you kind of get a sense. And the things to look for are, does the therapist get me? Now for some people, because of their background, it might take months before they can open up enough, before they feel comfortable with the therapist. So I would hope that someone doesn't just discard therapy within a couple of weeks because they didn't match that guideline of 2 to 3 sessions. It really depends on the person, okay? But really, you yourself should know, do I feel comfortable with this person? And discomfort is not necessarily a bad thing, because discomfort might mean that you're going in the right direction. You're dealing with things that you haven't wanted to deal with, that you've avoided for a long time. But if you feel that the therapist is pushing too hard, or if they're not hearing what you're saying, okay, because the therapist should be pushing, not too hard though. I tell my clients that we both have our hand on the wheel, and I've got my foot on the gas, you have your foot on the gas, but you also have your foot on the brake. So I might be kind of trying to compel you to move forward, but I have to be very careful that I don't push too hard. And again, clients can usually tell if they really reflect on it, if they realize, you know what, they may have credentials, they may have degrees, or they may be great with other people, they may have techniques, but they may not be the right person for me. So I would hope that the client, if they feel that I'm not really connecting with my therapist, that they can bring it up with the therapist. Don't just make excuses and not show up, because maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe the therapist said something that they didn't know you took a certain way. Maybe they could have said it better. I've had that experience myself where I said something that really was quite positive, but just because of the context, the client took it the wrong way and they never said anything. And then it kind of came up months later, and I felt really bad that this is something that we could have dealt with sooner. But the client, even though they felt comfortable enough with me to talk about certain things, they thought it would be wrong to point out what I did wrong. And you should never feel that way. If a therapist does make you feel that way, they're probably not a very good fit. You should be able to ask any question to the therapist, and within reason, not about the therapist themselves, not private issues necessarily, but about the therapy, about you, about their practice, their philosophy on how they're dealing with things. And if they get defensive, they're probably not the right therapist for you. And even if you ask an overly personal question, a therapist should be good enough that they say, well, you know what? That's really not appropriate in this case. It's not my therapy, it's yours, but they shouldn't get defensive about it. If they do, it might tell you something about the therapist. So there are so many different factors that make the therapist the right person, and the other one is the technique they use themselves, the orientation they have, whether it's cognitive behavioral, whether it's humanistic, whether it's psychodynamic. And if you're feeling that, the therapy, the technique, it just doesn't seem right for me, you should be able to discuss it with a therapist, because they may have a variety of different approaches, and the right approach for the right person is my motto. And so maybe they didn't quite know that it wasn't working for you. So I'm hoping that the relationship with between the client and the therapist is strong enough that you can broach these issues and you can work on it with the therapist. And if you can't, then they're probably not the right one for you.